Really excited about our next panel. One of the things we really tried to do this year was to really bring in a lot more local government knowledge and expertise and information, that sort of thing. This is a special panel. We're going to hear from the state, local governments, and the feds, and they're going to be talking about oil and gas inspection programs. So with that, I will turn it over to the session moderator, Jeffrey Moore.
Good morning, everyone. What a great start to the symposium so far. A big thanks to Kirby and team for always putting on a top-notch event. My name is Jeffrey Moore. I work for the City of Aurora. I serve as the first manager of the city's Energy and Environment Division. In that role, I've had the unique opportunity to actually set up a local government inspection program. So I'm really pleased to be able to host the panel this morning, and we've got some real experts here to learn from today. Please help me welcome to the stage our four panelists: Matt Wokosin with the BLM, Brittani Santistevan with ECMC, Oscar Fierro with Weld County, and Susan Sherman with City of Aurora. All right, I'll go to the first slide here. Let me set the tone for our panel with this phrase: inspections are where policy meets reality in the field. In Colorado, oil and gas development operates in one of the most complex regulatory environments in the country. Since 2019, ECMC has undergone a mission change. Local governments have gained new authority. It's often stated that Colorado has the strongest rules in the nation. Now, we know that compliance with those rules begins with the permitting phase, but compliance has to be more than just rules on the paper, and that's where inspections come in. Just like traffic laws, periodic confirmation of compliance is helpful to make sure that rules are followed. Well site inspections, both routine and at critical stages of operations, verify that Colorado's strong rules are followed. And they do what they're supposed to do, which is to keep people, including oil field employees, and the environment safe. So today we have inspector representatives from all different levels of government. We're going to talk about some of the details of inspections and how the different agencies work together. And finally, we'll end with some takeaways for local governments, such as what kind of questions you should be asking before you consider setting up an inspection program. So with that, let's jump right in. I'd like each of you panelists to very briefly introduce yourself, focus on how long you've been with your agency, and how many years you've been doing inspections.
Yep.
Matt, we'll start with you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Wokosin. I'm with the Bureau of Land Management. I've been with the BLM for a decade now as an oil and gas and a geothermal inspector. I've been with BLM Colorado since 2023 as the Inspection and Enforcement Coordinator. So I'm the lead oil and gas inspector for all federal and tribal lands and minerals in the state of Colorado, as well as a small portion of New Mexico and Kansas. Prior to the BLM, I was a lease operator and instrument tech up in North Dakota during the Bakken boom, and from 2013 to 2016. So.
Brittani?
Hi, good morning. My name is Brittani Santistevan. I am the Northeast Lead Compliance Specialist for ECMC. I've been with ECMC for going on 7 years now, and also been an inspector during that time.
Oscar?
Good morning, everyone. Oscar Fierro. I've been with Weld County for about a year and a half now, and I've been doing inspections for a year and a half.
Susan?
I'm Susan Sherman. I'm the Senior Oil and Gas Inspector for the City of Aurora, where I started in 2023. I started my work in the oil field in 2011 in Los Animas and Huerfano counties doing CBM wells. And then in 2013, I joined now the ECMC, it's the COGCC at that time, where I inspected in 7 counties, including Arapahoe, Albert, Douglas, El Paso, Washington, Lincoln, and Yuma counties.
Great, thank you. As you can see, we have some serious expertise here to learn from. Let's start by talking about authority for inspections, because that does differ from agencies. And we'll start with the state. Brittani, give us an overview of the authority that ECMC has, how that impacts your inspections, and any other state agencies that you work with for inspections.
So the ECMC does have authority through the Oil and Gas Act. We also oversee the permitting process and regulate development and production of the natural resources on the surface level through equipment and through downhole procedures. I think the impact of our inspections align with our mission of protecting the public's health, safety, welfare, environment, and wildlife resources, along with compliance across the state of Colorado. And ECMC does work closely with BLM, CDPHE, DWR, and any local and county governments.
Great, thank you. Susan, let's go all the way down to the local municipality level. Tell us about what local authority looks like in Colorado, what kind of inspections you do.
Okay, Aurora works by operator agreements and the oil and gas manual per city code. And based on Senate Bill 181, we only have surface use authority. So I do different type of inspections such as construction, conductor, drilling, completions, production, P&As and re-entries and spills.
Great, thank you. Oscar, you work for Weld County, a much larger local government. You've got 14,000 active wells. Tell us a little bit about your perspective on local government authority and how that influences your inspections.
Yeah, I think authority is needed to ensure that compliance is being met within the permitted conditions of all these approved facilities. And, you know, the main goal is the public safety and the environment to minimize the negative impacts as much as possible. And yeah, I think just to ensure that all these operators are following the rules and, you know, being good.
Excellent, thank you. Matt, let's go to the BLM. Tell us a little bit more about your inspections and, again, any other federal agencies that you might partner with for inspections.
Yep, so the BLM, through Congress and the Secretary of Interior, we've been vested the authority to manage federal lands and minerals, obviously. And so through various acts, we have like the Mineral Leasing Act, FLTMA, Federal Lands Policy and Management Act, Indian Mineral Development Act and Leasing Acts, and a big one for us is FGRMA. So that's the Federal Oil and Gas Royalty Management Act, which basically created my job back in 1982. So under that authority, BLM manages not only BLM lands and minerals, but we also manage all federal minerals for all other agencies. So for the decades BLM's been managing this, it would probably be hard for me to find an agency the BLM has not conferred with at least once, you know, due to that aspect across the country. But some big agencies that we deal with a lot are like U.S. Forest Service, obviously due to all the lands they have here in Colorado, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, BIA, and then another one is our sister agency at the Department of Interior, Honor. That's the Office of Natural Resource Revenue. So they're the agency that actually collects the royalties from our side that manages the actual production, and then they, you know, remit that off to the Treasury or to the states. And I think Will earlier today had mentioned, you know, on federal lands and minerals, so every dollar the BLM takes in, 48 cents comes back to the state that that dollar originated from. So I know some people don't always know that. They're always kind of surprised that, you know, this federal money is actually coming back to the state, not just staying at the federal side. Some other agencies we work with are the Bureau of Rec and also the various military branches. So we have, you know, like Buckley Space Force Base in Denver and the Lowry area next to that. And then we also do communicate with ECMC and other inspectors to, you know, make sure that operations for the operators go as smoothly as possible. So,
thank you. Follow-up question for anyone. What happens when there's overlap of authority? How do you handle overlap between the agencies?
I can take that, I guess.
Sure. For it.
You know, I think there's a lot of overlap too, and if I was like to view it as an operator, you know, viewpoint, as an operator, I'd try to find, you know, whichever authority it has like the stricter, the greater requirement, right? Because a lot of times when you meet one of the requirements for a specific agency, you're probably going to meet the other ones. Not always, but the majority of the time. And so, you know, I think conflict between the actual regulations is incredibly rare, but there definitely is a lot of overlap. So,
all right, anyone else? All right, another follow-up then. What about mineral ownership? Does that make any difference in which wells you inspect?
I can take it again. So, yeah, so the BLM, that definitely makes, it has a huge impact, right? So beginning of year, fiscal year for us is October 1st, July 1st, I think, for ECMC in the state, just to make things more confusing for operators, right? But so we do take a look at mineral interest percent in our weighting of what inspections we're going to do, because it wouldn't make sense from a taxpayer perspective, right, to be wasting resources on our inspectors on going out into like a case that potentially has like 0.0125%, right, versus a case that, you know, might produce half as much but has 100% federal interest. And so we do factor that into the cases we are planning to inspect for the year. So.
All right, and Brittani, you had some thoughts that you shared about that earlier. Do you want to share any of those today?
With the Indian tribal lands, just the ECMC rules don't apply to those areas, but we do still inspect them.
Okay, excellent. All right, I want to turn now to talking about some of the specific details of inspections. Matt, we'll start with you this time. Tell us how you prioritize and schedule your inspections. Is there a frequency goal that BLM has for well site inspections? And then how much of your inspections are done in the office versus out in the field on the well site?
Yep. So as I said earlier, I'm the inspection enforcement coordinator. So this is like one of the core functions of my job is I coordinate the inspection program across the state. And so at the beginning of the fiscal year, the BLM will take a moment and we will evaluate, the production on our cases and whatnot. And so I'll get in a little more detail. So the BLM, we kind of have two pieces of our inspection program. We have our surface side and our technical side. And so our surface side are the same inspectors that are also, processing APDs, which Bill had mentioned. So they're integral part of doing application for permit to drill. But then they also go out with that, and make sure that operators are building their pads and their roads correctly. Evaluating that drilling operations are taking place as permitted. Also doing inspections on, interim reclamation when they bring that pad back in for the production phase, along with actual production inspections and doing final abandonment inspections. And so our surface side, we do an evaluation at the beginning, like I said, for just our production piece. So we'll wait, is this production pad close to somewhere that's environmentally sensitive? Is it close to the population? How long has it been? Because we have a goal at the very least of inspecting all wells every 3 to 5 years. And then we'll also weight various things I'm just trying to think off the top of my head here. Like if there was past history of noncompliance and if there's any other things or stipulations in the permit. So that's our surface side. And then we have our technical side, which is kind of revolves around FOGRMA, which I mentioned earlier. And so Congress has mandated through FOGRMA that our technical staff inspects on the production side all cases that are high producing or all cases that have a past history of noncompliance. And so if either of those two, will rate them high priority in the BLM, which basically means they need to be inspected that year. And so we'll pause at the beginning of the fiscal year and we'll look at what is the production, weight it based on our mineral interest percent. And then another piece is, along with that history of noncompliance, is when was the last time we were out there, because how can we know if there's noncompliance if we're not inspecting it right? So we'll also weight our priority based on how long it's been since we inspected that case. Our technical side also does plugging inspections. So we basically rate all plugging inspections are high priority. You only get one chance really to witness a plugging, right? And we don't want like a zombie well incident happening in the future. And that can be expensive too, because we're going to plug a well, then we're going to reclaim that pad, reclaim the road. And if that well comes alive again, we got to get back in there and take care of it. And so we try to avoid that. Drilling, it would be a waste of taxpayer resources to have inspector out during all the time, right? So we prioritize like items such as, have we ever seen this rig on federal land before? Was there history of noncompliance with the rig? How long has it been since we've seen the rig? And then also, like, is this rig close to the population, close to riparian area or whatnot? And then also like items such as, what's the bottom hole pressure for the well? So all that goes into our drilling inspection and weighting our priority with that. And then the last big inspection we have is our idle well program for going out and inspecting idle wells and making sure they have all their paperwork. So I know that was a lot. So
that was a lot. One follow-up. Talk about your time in the office.
Oh, yeah,
versus
my time in the office. Yep. So with our inspectors, I think we strive for like a 50-50. The more time we can get out in the field, it's better, right? And so that is something we strive for, but you do have to have that paperwork component. You got to prep before you go out in the field. You got to do your follow-up work and your documentation. So we definitely strive for at least 50% in the field.
Excellent. All right, Brittany, same question for ECMC. Tell us about how you prioritize and schedule your inspections. You have a frequency goal for getting to all the well sites, and then that mix of review time versus, are you spending time in the office doing review before you go out to the field? And if so, what does that look like in terms of balance?
So the compliance specialists schedule their work using assigned lists, risk metrics, and supervisor guidance. Every August, the compliance specialists receive a snapshot list, high-risk wells, orphan wells, and a year's sense list. They're kind of like a guideline on what to prioritize first at the start of our year, beginning in August. And in congruence with that, with the list, the compliance specialists are expected to witness events like drilling, hydraulic fracturing, plug and abandonment, mechanical integrity tests, and also complete underground injection inspections. We like to see the compliance unit out in the field every day. And they do perform some pre-inspection homework before they go out to the field. And if for any reason they did miss any information, we have the capability to look up that information in our vehicles via installed Starlink.
All right, very good. Oscar?
So our goal is to inspect facilities that are already in production at least once a year. And when it comes to new facilities, we inspect them from each stage of the process, from the start of construction all the way to the first production. We use a software called the Cella that allows us to, document our inspection and also review any documents associated with that permit. So we can actually be on site and review documents, visually seeing what's on site, and then if it matches up with the documents, and that helps us definitely be more efficient because we don't have to spend too much time in the office reviewing stuff and then trying to remember all that information when you're actually on the facility.
All right, and that's split between those two, time in the office versus time in the field?
Yeah, very little time in the office. I think, we're able to get out pretty fast in the morning and hit multiple locations.
Excellent. All right, Susan?
In Aurora, we schedule our inspections based on a quarterly basis. We go to every well and every pipeline appurtenance every quarter. And so I just do them all. I do all the production, drilling, whatever we're doing. And then we have 2 orphan wells that I inspect every quarter and do the FLIR survey to make sure the well's not leaking. And then we have 1 small operator well that's shut in that we inspect. And I prioritize mostly based on the new wells that are being drilled, because in Aurora, we require that the 4 aquifers be drilled so that we can monitor those annually. So when I go to those drilling inspections, number 1, we do the BOP stack inspection because there are so many people in Aurora, and that we want that BOP to work correctly. And then I inspect the cement jobs in the monitoring wells, and the development of those wells. And then, like I said, we inspect them annually. I prioritize high priority habitat areas where I look at ahead of time that those areas are being taken care of, and work with CPW if I have a question. And also air monitoring is a big priority if I have re-inspections to do, or if I have to work with APCD on a question that I have. And I have to be escorted whenever I go to these sites, except for the orphan wells and the small operator well. So I'm only out in the field 1 day a week, but the operator does a great job in scheduling that, and we work pretty good as a team. The escort that I've been with for 3 years now always helps me out.
Excellent. And talk about that review time,
Review time
between in the field.
So I review. My written inspection is I review the COGIS database and the on-base database for APCD. That's all done in the field, in the office, and I look at Carbon Mapper ahead of time to prioritize if I need to go to a well, and that's a new mapping tool that's online that shows methane and CO2 emissions worldwide, but of course I look just for the Aurora area. And we have found some for other local governments. There has been some emissions from Carbon Mapper, and we're in contact with them, and I have then contacted the other local government to say, you better go check these wells, and sure enough, they 2 local governments, they have had to call in people to seal those wells up.
Great, thank you, Susan. Here's a follow-up question for anyone. What about complaints? Do those get priority when they come in? How does that change your inspection routine? Brittani?
Yeah, so that's actually where my position comes into play. As the lead, I get all the complaints assigned to me. I do try to respond to them within 24 hours of receiving them. This kind of just takes off the workload for the other compliance unit. That way they can still do their regular daily inspections that we need to accomplish. And then we do have future plans for other lead positions throughout the state in the future.
All right, anyone else?
We don't have very many complaints in Aurora, believe it or not. But when we do, we usually get a written complaint that we call the complainant right away and see what they need to have looked at. And then we call the operator and tell them we've received this complaint, and then work together to see the resolution to the process. And then I call the operator back when the decision is made what to do about the complaint. And then I finally call the complainant back and say, do you agree with closure of this complaint?
Excellent. Anyone else?
Yeah, for us, complaints get full priority when they come in, and, we address them and, try to resolve them, or, reach out to the operator if needed, just so, everybody's aware and there's nothing being missed, and making sure that the issue gets resolved in a timely manner.
Great, thank you. And Oscar, you talked about documenting your inspections. Here's a follow-up question for any of you or all of you. How do you get the results of your inspections out to the public? Oscar, you want to start?
Yeah. So we have the Weld County portal where you can click on the oil and gas tab, and it'll pop up all the permits within the county. And within that purple triangle, you can click on the related records, and there's a section for inspections, and you can see our comments, or the date of the inspection for these facilities, and see whether if it's in compliance or out of compliance, or if any follow-ups were issued. And so there's that level of transparency. You can kind of see what's going on.
Okay. Susan?
In Aurora, per our operator agreement or oil and gas manual, I have to get my written inspection back to the operators in a short timeline. But after I send them my inspections for the week, I post those on the Aurora Oil and Gas website so our public can see it. So it's pretty short timeline that we make sure it's transparent to everyone.
Excellent. Brittani?
Yeah, we actually are pretty similar to Weld County, where we do have a public website that anybody can access. Not everything is accessible, but the inspection and some documents that are attached to that is visible to the public whenever they need access for it.
Excellent. And finally, Matt?
Yep. So the BLM does not have we don't have a easily accessible public website like a lot of these other agencies do. Normally, if you want to get records, you'll have to do a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act. I will say, if you're interested, if a specific site has been inspected or not, there's no issue in reaching out to the local field office that manages that area for any inquiries you have, and we will reply from the BLM side. So.
All right, thank you. Next question. Tell me in big picture terms, what's the outcome of a successful inspection for your agency? We'll start with Matt.
Yep. I can keep this one pretty short and simple, I think. So the BLM manages a compliance program right through FOGRMA and our various other laws Congress has passed. And so I think a big thing is us doing an inspection is verifying that the operator is in compliance with all the laws, regs, and the permits. And if not, then we're going to take action to bring that compliance, bring that operator back into compliance. So
okay,
pretty short and sweet and simple. Still a lot of work, though.
Yeah, that ECMC definitely echoes that. We want to make sure that it is compliance and that they are abiding by ECMC rules and regulations.
Oscar?
So for me, a successful inspection is going through the final orders and, verifying that everything within the orders matches what's on site, and also going through our checklists and, making sure that nothing is missed. And also, if you encounter any issues on site, addressing that issue, accordingly and getting it resolved so compliance is met at all times.
Excellent.
In Aurora, what has been good about having an escort with the company is that many of the times the issues are fixed on the spot. And good communications with the operator. We have monthly meetings with our major operator, and we have reached many resolutions in those meetings. Another thing is having the respect of the pumper. When you go out there, if they have respect for you and will do the corrective action you've asked, they will meet you on site without even being asked. That has been very helpful in many cases too. a small operator, like with my big operator, I can't contact the pumper, but the small operators have been so great on meeting me out there and fixing things. One of the biggest feedbacks I get to show that I've been doing my job is we have biweekly oil and gas check-in meetings with several groups in Aurora. And I got a call after one of the meetings that said, keep doing what you're doing. And I wish more people, just for a good inspection, I wish more people would look at our inspections on our website. Maybe we need to get more notice of that out to the public on that my inspections are out there.
Great, thank you all. All right, I want to switch now to imagine that you are helping a local government set up a new inspection program. We'll talk about some topics related to that. The first one is equipment technology. Now, of course, you've got some standard things like a vehicle, a laptop, cell phone, personal protective equipment. But beyond those standard types of equipments, what kind of equipment do you use in your inspections routinely? How does it make a difference? What's your go-to tool that you can't live without? And Susan, we'll start with you this time.
My FLIR camera has become my go-to. When I was with the state, I didn't always have a FLIR camera because there are so many more inspectors, but I have a dedicated one just for me. And my escort and I, we check, well, because we do it quarterly, I kind of split it up as to what equipment we look at, but I'm sure you guys all know these terms, the VRUs, the VRTs, the separators, the ECDs, and the thief hatches are a big place where we find leaks, that usually small leaks, but the best thing I found with my FLIR camera is during emergency shutdowns, I can verify that the site is back online efficiently by using my FLIR camera, and the FLIR camera also has shown me what caused the emergency shutdown. The 3 continuous permanent air monitors around the location, we get, based on our agreements again, we get quarterly data sent to us, so that has been so helpful to keep us updated on that, and anything we see, the operator works with us and we get, if there are any corrections, but we go over the data that we find. Photos we talked about as a group. Photos are always a good documentation, and even though they fix them right away, I still document on the inspection that it happened, but also that they fixed them right away if that's what happened. But it also serves for me when I go back to the reinspection to make sure that the corrective action was made. Another good tool has been, and we now annually go to visit the METEC facility, the methane emission testing facility in Fort Collin, to make sure we're up on the latest technology for methane emissions. And Carbon Mapper, I already talked about that. That is becoming quite a great tool. It's just carbonmapper.org on the website. And lastly, our local government meetings is useful to learn from others how their inspections are going.
Great. Oscar, what's your go-to tools?
So my main tool that I need to do my inspections efficiently is cell service and my iPad. You know, as long as I have cell service, I can review documents, complete inspections, and, you know, take pictures or videos for documentation. And we also have a noise meter, but we don't get to use it too often, only when noise complaints come in, but we're pretty, you know, minimal.
All right, and Brittani?
I think utilizing the OGI camera is something that I use quite frequently on my inspections. We are trying to use drones more. We have a 360 ground camera that can do the whole location just by walking around, and also laser detection. So those are some very important tools that we're trying to implement more in our daily inspections, but definitely the optimal gas imagery camera, so that way we can identify leaks.
And Brittani, I think you mentioned drones as well. Are you doing something with drones?
Yeah, we do use drones quite often, especially when they're first building the location. It helps us and people in the Denver office to kind of just map out what the location is going to look like when it is completed.
Excellent. Matt, tell us about what tools you use, the BLM.
Yeah, all me or Oscar, tablet, you know, whatever companies you're using has become like a vital piece, right? In the last 5 to 10 years, they've gotten a lot more powerful, cheaper, and it's a lot easier for us to use things. And the BLM also has automated software for us when we're doing like things like production inspections. I didn't talk as much about it earlier, but the BLM has requirements on measurement and royalty. And so, we look at things like the actual gas meter and their setup and whatnot. And we've got a lot more efficiency, out of using automated software to make sure that, their setup is proper. We don't have to go back to the office and do more paperwork. We can have more time in the field. So like the tablet, and also with that improved GIS software, it's gotten way better in the last several years. It's made a huge difference in our efficiency as inspectors. And then lastly, we're also getting self-service, and I think you had mentioned Starlink. We're trying to get all that implemented with our inspectors so they have that continued communication, and also they can download any information they need on the site instead of having to go back to the office. So,
great. I know when I was putting together Aurora's inspection program, one of my first questions was about hiring an inspector or cross-training someone to fill that role. Can each of you tell me about the training that you've received related to your position, and also what kind of characteristics do you think make up a good inspector? Oscar, let's go to you first.
Okay, so my prior experience before transitioning into an inspector definitely helped me, acclimate myself, because I've already been around most of the operations that we're inspecting, and the hardest part for me was learning the code, but the more that I'm exposed to it, the easier it gets. And, it's always changing or being updated, so you really got to just, know all the details that align with the things that you're inspecting. And, as far as, becoming a good inspector, I think anybody can be a good inspector, as long as you're eager to learn and motivated. But with everything, it takes time to really be good at everything or at anything.
Got it. Susan, talk about your training.
That's a good question.
That's
a good question because I've been asked many times how someone out in the field will ask me, how do I get your job? So Aurora hired me, I believe, because of my experience in Aurora as a state inspector. Arapahoe County was one of my counties. But I think COGCC hired me because of my 3 degrees, especially my agronomy degree. But I also have several certifications. I'm a certified water operator in the state of Colorado. I have Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission certification, the FLIR OGI certification current. OSHA excavation and HAZWOPER are current. The excavation certification is important for the cut, cap, and covers I do after a reentry to make sure the plugs were set correctly and that there's no leaking to the surface. I have state odor and opacity certification, Wildwell, EPA class 1 through 5 UIC certification, and then Aurora also keeps me current on first aid, CPR, spirometer testing, and my Colorado Groundwater Association membership. I think a good inspector gets out of their truck, picks up the phone, and works with operators.
Thank you. Matt?
Yes, so the BLM requires our inspectors to get certified through our internal certification program. Due to FOGRMA, BLM inspectors are required to be certified. And so our inspectors, myself included when I started, we go through a 12-week course with the BLM. It's split into 6 2-week modules. And so we make sure all our inspectors are trained basically to be a jack of all trades for oil and gas, because we basically do everything leasing and cradle to grave for the well sites, right? And so like module 1 is kind of going over laws, enforcement tools, and regulations. Module 2 is drilling. So we'll spend 2 weeks in drilling, and then we have mod 3 for 2 weeks just learning on plugging. Mod 4 is oil measurement. Mod 5 is gas measurement, and then the last module is spending 2 weeks doing records audit and royalty accountability. So we have all our inspectors go through that. Then once they get through that, they also have to do an in-the-field inspection review with the inspection enforcement coordinator for whatever state jurisdiction area they're in. So I do that for the state of Colorado for the federal inspectors. I'll actually go out with them and have them do inspections in front of me and make sure that they're doing everything proper. And along with that, too, I'm also one of the instructors at our module courses. So that's all that the training the BLM requires. As to what it makes a good inspector, if you're looking to get an inspector, I'm thinking like from mind frame, if I was hiring someone, I think like there's kind of 2 core things here. I'd want to make sure that they're motivated for the job, right? So we're going to have inspectors out there independently doing actions and enforcement, and I think they need to care about the goals of the program. and what the laws require. So that's a big thing, making sure that they're actually properly motivated to do what you're asking of them. I know it's the same for all jobs, but I think it's really vitally important for when you're having people that are being public stewards and utilizing taxpayer resources. And then the second piece of that is hopefully have at least a little bit of private industry background, so they can see the other side of what they're inspecting, and also, know what's going on the other side, and get that better communication between the operator and the inspector, right? So I think those are my two things I really look at.
Great. And Brittani.
Okay, well, under our new compliance manager, he has implemented an annual training within the compliance unit. That way we are more uniform with our inspection documentation. Excuse me. ECMC also provides opacity school, the sound meter, OGI camera, drones, laser detection, the 360 camera, and even in-field training when all operations are occurring within the state, like drilling, fracking, things like that. ECMC, I feel that they do try to offer whatever type of training that they can, so that way the compliance is the best that they can be. And I think that a great characteristic that an inspector should have is caring about your job, what you do. All of the compliance unit does live within the area that they inspect, so even that the oil and gas operations do affect them directly.
Great. A follow-up question for any of you. Again, imagine you're helping a local government set up an inspection program. What questions should they be asking themselves before they would consider that? Anyone?
I could speak up. I think the biggest thing I'm viewing this, properly utilizing taxpayer resources, right? Because we're public stewards, and so I think I'd want to ask, make sure that I'm not duplicating efforts that maybe other agencies are doing. It wouldn't make sense to have two inspectors out doing the exact same thing on the exact same pad, right? And so I think that's important to understand what other programs are doing, be in communication with them so that, we're efficiently utilizing taxpayer resources. But maybe you might want to do some duplication, not having the same inspector, but, if the local community, there's been comments and outreach that, they want something looked at more in depth than maybe ECMC or the federal government is looking at their specific well sites. Maybe there will be a little bit of extra overlap. So,
Oscar?
So I'm not sure on, everything that goes into creating a program, but I think a good piece to have is a good complaint form. And, because you want to have them provide you as much information as possible. So, it paints a better picture. So, you know how to address the issue faster and more efficiently, and, get whoever needs to be involved, quicker. And yeah, a good complaint form definitely goes a long way.
Having come from the state down to the local government level, I think what has helped the most is contacts with other agencies, with other local governments. And so I would say join any group you can, because like Matt said about the duplication of inspections, I try to make sure that I review all the ECMC inspections. I review all the state memos that come out for enforcement actions, and I call them if I need to. But like I said, don't be afraid your person to pick up the phone and call people. Give them that authority. Excellent.
We can get our last slide on the screen. We've got some additional questions here on the screen that you could consider if you're thinking about setting up a local government inspection program. One of the biggest questions you should answer first is, what problem are you trying to solve? Is it an increase in frequency of inspections? Is it public health you're concerned about? Is it nuisance complaints like noise or dust? What is it that you're trying to solve? What problem are you trying to solve? Ask that question first, and that's going to help you provide some insight into whether or not you should set up your own program and what parameters you consider for that. All right, we're really close to question and answers here, so if you've got some questions, I hope that you'll provide those, and we'll get some questions here for the panel. One more question here for anyone. What about some of the up-and-coming energy resources such as geothermal? Are any of your agencies making plans to perform inspections on those types of sites?
Yes, Colorado is actively regulating and preparing for expansion of geothermal. ECMC has already collaborated with stakeholders to develop our 1300 series rules, which actually took in effect in September of 2024.
Excellent. Anyone else?
I can speak. So I do have a background in geothermal. I worked for California for 5 years on the BLM side with geothermal. And so, the BLM, and Congress also, tries to promote geothermal energy. So we do have our laws and regulation. I believe they mentioned it quickly during the geothermal panel. And so we already do have that well established. There's a lot of geothermal and federal out in the West over in Nevada and California. And so if it does come here, we are well set to implement that. So
That's great.
One innovative thing I was seeing is, but not in Aurora, is the not data centers. What are they called? Bitcoin mining for the small operators that have lost their gas sales line. Those are inspected, but that's really down to the local level to set the authority for use of those. ECMC, you allow no flaring. Do you still allow Bitcoin mining to be done?
To my knowledge, no. But I don't know.
All right, well, we're getting ready for questions and answers here. Big thanks to each of our panelists today, and I hope each of you learned something about inspections and a little bit more about the world of inspection operations. If you are a local government interested in setting up an inspection program, we believe it's worth considering. We'll close by adding that state law does allow you to charge an inspection fee, which can help fund your program. If you have more questions, please come find us today or one of the networking events. We're going to be around. We'd love to answer any questions that you have. And with that, we are available for questions. So going back here.
Hi, Jane Turner, City of Longmont. I had a question about reported releases. Seems like usually at ECMC I'm dealing with separate staff who are helping with cleanup and confirmation testing. I was just curious how you guys coordinate internally. Are the inspection teams aware of those types of activities going on? Sometimes I see ECMC inspections where the inspector's notes say, it looks like some sort of remediation's going on here. And so I was curious to understand how you all keep track of the different pieces.
Generally, when we do run into things like that, we will communicate with our reclamation side. They're the ones that would actually handle those types of things. That's mostly, we're trying to get better actually at communicating with those findings, because sometimes as the inspector we don't really know what's going on, but once we get in contact with somebody from reclamation, we get more information, and generally they're the ones that will go ahead and go out to location and follow up on that.
Great. Back here.
Hi, I'm Erin Walker, Flywheel Energy. Y'all had mentioned carbon mapping and drones, and I was curious if y'all have used that for an enforcement tool alone, or if it always requires follow-up inspections kind of thing.
We are trying to actually implement the drones for enforcement. We have had an incident where there was a blowout, and we were flying drones quite often to look at the whole location and how they were actually remediating all of that. Yeah, I do believe that we are planning to utilize the drones more for enforcement purposes, but for right now, yeah, it's just kind of more on the ground type things.
And I'll add for the carbon mapper that we mentioned in Aurora, no, we are not using that for enforcement. We're just using it as a point of data.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hi, Robert Arnoff with the town of Frederick. I also run an inspection program, so I'm kind of curious to hear if each of you, or if you have anybody in particular that wants to mention something that they're going to be adding to their inspection program in the future, just out of curiosity, how to bolster that program.
Plug testing. Plug testing. In Aurora, we're going to add soil testing over plugged wells. annual test there just to check to see if there's any leak. That's something we're looking at adding in the future. All right, I think we might have time for one more question. All right, seeing none. Thank you all. Appreciate your time today.
Awesome.